Let's do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
How's it going, guys? You know, I would say I'm a pretty big fan of the Nier series, ever since I was first introduced to the soundtrack as a kid on YouTube. From the series, I always wanted a Grimoire Weiss added to my collection. So, I decided to make it myself, and here's my process on how I did that. To get started, you might want to learn some 3D modeling. I understand it's difficult. I actually learned how to use Blender at the beginning of the year, and sadly, I did not record my process, so if you are interested in that, you can see some highlights in my Instagram. I know that the people who understand Kira looking at my model right now are feeling a certain way, but my motto is this: if it works, it works, but safety is always first. And as you can see, the print came out just fine. It's only half the model since my model was actually a little bigger than my bed. And now with all the 3D pieces printed out, I assembled them together with super glue. My plan now is to do some silicone molding and casting. To prepare your models for that, you just hot glue these models onto foam board or cardboard that are about 1.5 inches larger than the model itself. But before you hot glue, make sure you tape one side of it to make it waterproof. If there are still little gaps or imperfections on your model right now, at this stage, this is the time to fix it. I am not joking, you want to fix it right now. This is because every single resin cast you're going to make with that silicone mold is going to have that same mistake, and you do not want to be wanting to sand all of those mistakes for like 10 casts, alright? If you're not quite sure what to use to fill in those gaps, then I highly recommend using
spackling wood glue.
I find that the combination of spackling and wood glue works pretty well for these things, and also wood textures, which you can see a video right here. And now it's time to make a wall to keep your silicone in. And just like the foam board cardboard base that you made, just tape one side to make it waterproof too. And at least give 1 inch between your model and wall, and hot glue everything together to make it watertight. It is time to do silicone molding! Some tips and tricks with silicone molding, especially if you don't have a vacuum to take out all the bubbles and your hand mixing them. When pouring silicone, you're just going to focus on one point only. Like in my mold right here, I'm only pouring in the middle at first, and I'm pouring it from way high up, so it becomes like a thin thread of silicone coming down. When it pours down from a high point like this and it becomes like a thin thread, all of the bubbles start to pop out, and you don't have to worry about the bubbles anymore. And make sure to put silicone on only the places where silicone is there already. This is because if you put silicone on the newer parts of the model, there's more likely there'll be air bubbles. And after overnight and the silicone is completely cured, you can add a mother mold, which is a mold that is on the outside of the silicone made from resin or plaster that helps keep the silicone in shape while you resin cast. On the side note, I recommend resin so it doesn't break and you cry later. But for this mold, I didn't need to make a mother mold since it was flat, but for silicone mold like this, you're gonna want to make one. And wowza! It's a time for resin cast! Yeah, I would say resin casting is pretty straightforward. You just mix the two parts together and then just pour it in quick as possible since this type of resin cures in like 5 minutes. For a mold like this, I recommend pouring in the edges first and also the deeper crevices of the details. And for God's sake, make sure you wear some friggin' gloves and some goggles, and make sure you're in a well-ventilated area so you do not die sooner than later. For quick drying resin like this, I recommend doing batch by batch so it doesn't dry on you as you pour. Trust me, it's a waste and it makes you cry inside. And after 3 or 4 layers of resin, I just put in some spackling in this face and then peel off the silicone.
I like it cut, G.
Now, for a raw cast like this, the edges are probably bumpy, so you gotta sand it off. But not gonna lie, hand sanding sucks! So I got a super extra cheap hand sander and I'm just sanding the edges off. Haha, whoops! I forgot to record this, but I accidentally skipped a step here, but I usually put 2 or 3 layers of primer first and then the silver spray paint.
Nice.
Then, if I see any imperfections, I'll hand sand it down and then just spray it again. And now for the fun part! Now I just have to paint the background of Weiss. I'm first weathering him down so he looks a bit older, you know, since he's about what, like 1,400 years old. And to do that, you just pretty much water down black acrylic, put it on there real quick, and then just wipe it off real quick too. After weathering Weiss, I am now just adding the brown background, which is just black-brown acrylic with a tiny brush. And you know, while editing, it looks actually quite simple since everything is speed up. But you know, this speed is actually like what, 20,000% faster? So here is the normal speed. I timed myself doing this, and just painting the face of the details was about like 2 hours. You know, it was worth it in the end because I really liked how it turned out. Alright, anyway, let's speed it up. And I'm done painting. Alright, now it's time to prepare the base. You know, since Weiss is a book and all, I wanted to be more functional, so I decided to put my resin casts on these sketchbooks. So here I am just painting on top of the sketchbook covers with brown paint. And you know, I'm not painting in the middle since the resin casting will be glued on there. It's time to prepare the spine. So he has some silver accents on the spine for Weiss and Noir, so this one's Noir I'm working on right now. And to prepare the spine, I just got 2-inch width pleather strips that are about the length of the sketchbook, and I just glued them on the spine pretty much. I used E6000 for this since the glue is really flexible and it's pretty strong, and I just glue in the middle first, let it set overnight, and then I glue on the other edges later. Masking tape is a great way to keep it down. And the little stick you saw, which is just a dowel, I just taped it on the spine because you see there's a little divot on the spine of the sketchbook, and I just use it to hold it down and keep it shaped. And I use these boxes, which I use for my shop, and put it on top of my sketchbooks overnight so the spine glues on properly. And if you're wondering why the plastic is so dirty, it's because I've been using them for my fake chainmail. So if you're curious about that, check it out. And now it's time to peel off all that masking tape. Sometimes the masking tape would peel off some paint, but that's okay, I do some touch-ups on it and it'll be all brand spanking new. So now it's just finally time to mount on the resin castings. All I do for this step is just pretty much put a lot of E6000 on it, and then put a little bit of hot glue on each of the corners. This way, while the E6000 is drying, the hot glue just keeps everything in place. If you thought that was interesting, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. I would deeply appreciate it. Well, I shall see you later.
I am an arcane text, not some manual of combat.
Oh, great. Why does every book I meet have a bad attitude?
Oh, aren't we clever? As if any mere tome could compare to the wonderment that is Grimoire Weiss.